This morning, prosecutors in the Idaho college murders case saying Brian Kohberger's homework could play a crucial role in the trial. In a new filing, prosecutors say the alleged killer turned in what amounts to be a crime scene how-to guide as part of a homework assignment in 2020. Some of the details mirroring the Idaho college murder scene.
Prosecution is trying to make the argument that this information plays somewhat of a playbook for not leaving evidence behind a crime scene.
The 12-page crime scene scenario final from his time at DeSales University, detailing how an investigating officer would process a scene where a deceased white female had been found, including the use of protective clothing to avoid contaminating the scene or leaving fingerprints. While Kohberger's lawyers say he is innocent and argue he has a developmental disability that prevents him from having the speed and coordination to carry out the murders, prosecutors point to purchases he made, including a balaclava, a type of ski mask that covers the head but not the eyes. They say he bought it in January of 2022. Prosecutors sharing this never-before-seen image drawn by the surviving roommate in the days after the murders, showing what they say appears to be that kind of mask. She told authorities the man behind the mask that she saw in the house that night, bushy eyebrows. And another purchase in the spotlight, a K-bar knife and sheath bought on the Amazon account Kohberger used, similar to the knife and sheath seen in this image from the Amazon website. But the defense arguing that anyone from the suspect's family could have made the purchase from that Amazon account.
Well, prosecutors also say they can provide testimony from witnesses with knowledge that Kohberger is the one who purchased the knife. The murder weapon has never been found, and prosecutors also say that Kohberger searched Amazon for a replacement knife after the murders.
So, that evidence is extremely powerful, and for several reasons, all right? When they're talking about he doesn't have the mental capacity to plan, carry out knowledge, intellectual capacity to plan these murders and to get away with these murders. A 12-page document was written by him for a college class for their assignment. And he spoke about things like Locard's theory of exchange, Locard's principle of exchange. That's the principle where a human being goes into a crime scene, they bring something from the outside in with them. And just on the basis of going into that crime scene, upon leaving, they take something from the crime scene with them, and that's called contamination. So it's so important to keep the scene as pristine as possible, and that's what one of the things Kohberger writes about in his 12-page assignment. How involved do you think, and how organized do you think you have to be to understand crime scenes and this a female victim and a male going in and out of a crime scene, or a student to process this crime scene without contaminating it? That's not the work of someone who's dyslexic or someone who has ADHD. That's someone who is extremely organized and understands what needs to be done in a crime scene to keep it pristine, how to process it without the processor becoming part of that crime scene. And that's some of the things that Brian Kohberger wrote about, right? He wrote about to keep this crime scene pristine in order to process it and not to become part and contaminate the crime scene. So it seems that every defensive that his defense team, led by Ann Taylor, brings up, that the prosecution somehow thwarts that with more evidence. Here's the thumbnail of him taking a selfie on the morning of the murders.
He pulled from a phone, a K-bar knife bought on Amazon, and a sketch of a mask. Those are just some of the big revelations in the case against Brian Kohberger. I have the biggest bombshells dropped by the state and the defense. Plus, will prosecutors actually call Brian Kohberger's family to testify against him?
So important that the evidence of right here of the balaclava, which they have evidence that he ordered, and the sketch drawn by Dylan Mortensen of that balaclava, such powerful evidence. And that is some of the evidence that is going against him now. And of course, the defense will try to say that Dylan Mortensen is unreliable because she was intoxicated. She cannot identify the perpetrator except for the fact that she suggested that the perpetrator in this case had bushy eyebrows. And when we pull up this picture of Brian Koberger, the selfie that he took on the morning of the murders, the prosecution will let the jury decide whether or not those are in fact bushy eyebrows. And, what do we think here? Are they bushy eyebrows or are they not bushy eyebrows? And that, again, will be decided. I think that you can look at this and say, wow, yeah, it looks like it's bushy eyebrows to me, And of course, the most important evidence is right there, is that K-Bar knife that they now have the Amazon account that it was ordered from. And of course, the knife sheath that was left behind. And on the button of the knife sheath was Brian Koberger's touch DNA. So powerful of evidence. And then we have just the brand new in the last 12 or 14 hours, evidence from News Nation. Ashley Banfield with Kaffendorfer, a former FBI agent, Kaffendorfer, who discovered that 2 years ago, based on a Strava app, that Brian Koberger had run a 6-minute mile. That is extremely fast for a regular amateur or for someone who's pretty much an everyday runner to run a 6-minute mile.